Welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to speak to you this morning. I'm on the West Coast, so it is morning time for me. But I do want to hopefully take this next half an hour and share with you some of my thoughts about a subject that I'm doing for JPL, but also doing with my colleagues outside of JPL. It's called Future IT. Now, a little bit about me first is that, as Kara mentioned, I was the CIO at JPL for 14 years. I've been with JPL 16. So the last 2 years, I've been focused on providing advisory work and doing strategic work for the Office of the Director of the lab. We're going through some change now for a new director, but at the same time, the person I've been reporting to and working with it has been in place. So as I look to my past, you mentioned, Kara mentioned the CIO FDA, a lot of fun, but it seems like so long ago, certainly 16 years ago at least. And I was also chief of IT at IRS. You can ask me about that later. That was an interesting experience. Then I spent 16 years with Marriott International in various roles and left there as Senior VP of Operations and Technical Services. And so prior to that, I had some experience with banking, with networking, and with a chemical company where I really learned to enjoy working with the science community, quite frankly. So my background is varied. It's almost like technology in many ways. As you could think, as I'm talking about future IT, I do want to just take a quick look at the past, and then I want to talk about JPL just for a little bit. So if you think about it, and my gray hair shows that I've lived quite a bit of time with it. There were the times of the mainframes, there were times of mini computers, there were times of PCs and Macs that provided from centralization to a distributed world and to meet the end user at their location versus the behind the scenes at a data center. After that, things really started changing, and the internet brought, and I'm skipping a lot of technologies, but the internet brought a democratization of how we work and how we communicate and how we interact with each other. And then you think about small devices. So there was the BlackBerry, for those who remember the BlackBerry, mostly for the keyboard, but the fact that you could do your email from anywhere was kind of a new way of working on a small device. And then the iPhone kind of changed everything, where we started focusing more on applications and using the technology to really change how we operated and provide a new method of being remote, giving you access to data and things of that nature. So we've seen things change, with cloud being the next thing. And cloud has certainly given us an opportunity to have virtually unlimited capacity at our fingertips, and to change how we look at work in the future. So with that backdrop, though, let me explain a few things at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. First of all, we are the leading center for robotic exploration of planets, our own planet included in that. And we have several exciting missions. Most notably, you probably are aware of Perseverance and Ingenuity, our Mars 2020 rover that launched during the pandemic and landed during the pandemic. And I think that's one of those cool things that we can claim. The workforce was on lab, the essential workforce was in person on lab, screened, of course, to make sure that we could pull those missions off. The landing was phenomenal, had new technology. We'll talk later about AI and ML, but it certainly used new technology to have a better landing. The helicopter was an amazing device to work in atmosphere that's 1/100th that of the Earth, and to be able to send back pictures through the rover up to a Mars reconnaissance orbiter and then back to Earth is quite a remarkable feat. And so we are seeing a lot of firsts. And JPL is not stopping with that. That mission is still in operations. And occasionally we use the helicopter now to provide reconnaissance for the rover in terms of direction of path it's going. So what does this all mean for the future is the missions we have upcoming in the next several years. We have a lot of missions starting this year, launching in the latter part of this year, as well as next year, that will start providing more data than we've ever had before coming to us. And that puts a challenge on our systems at JPL. And we're building capability. Certainly, we started with cloud many years ago to help us be prepared for those kind of things. We have exciting missions in our horizon that are being worked on as of today. For example, Europa, which is a icy moon of Jupiter. We have a mission to, and hopefully in 2024, to be launched and explore that icy planet and eventually have a device or technology that will go through the crust of the ice, and hopefully we'll get a view of whatever the water or whatever the substance is that we can explore in that. This is stuff that Hollywood, enjoys, quite frankly, and we hope to have some exciting findings on that. So what does this all mean? Well, when you take a look at science, scientists want data, but they want data from places that humans right now can't go to. And what do? We provide we have to build the technology, because usually can't buy it off the shelf too easily. And we have to build the technology to get the data. We have to have a spacecraft to get us there. We have to have a rocket to get us up into space. And so when you think of it in those terms, you start seeing a natural progression of what type of technologies are you going to need to do that? What are the obstacles, and how can we reduce the friction, if you will, to provide the IT that's necessary to have these future missions be successful? And so that's a little bit about JPL. Our future is exciting. I would invite you to look at our website to see the missions we have currently running, as well as the future missions, to get more detail on those. My role is to help define what the future looks like in IT, not the organization, but the function of IT, because we have a lot of IT across the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Our missions are like floating data centers, if you will, flying data centers, and they're getting more sophisticated. As we find technologies, they'll let us get past some of the things like radiation and stuff like that that prevent us in the past from having more capacity. I'll give you an example. We have two missions, two Voyagers that are in the heliosphere past any spacecraft has ever been before, past our galaxy, our universe, that is, and are still communicating. Now, that communication may not last much longer as they get further away, but they're expected to continue flying on and on with the capacity they have. Unfortunately, the communications may not be able to reach them forever, but what we have discovered is quite amazing. So what is future IT? This is my definition. It is envision is projecting the technologies tomorrow, future operating models, workforce strategies, and possible new organization models. And so today I hope to present to you my case for what the technologies will look like, what we should plan for, what the workforce strategy might look at. We certainly have a challenge now that we're still in a pandemic, but we're hoping in a post-pandemic that we all can work and learn from what we have done to how we can have a better work environment and still be productive and still, in many cases, have the maintain the culture of the company that's desired. Also included in this, though, is the opportunity, to look at new business models. This digital transformation has now been going on for quite a while, and it's been estimated, and I got this from another presentation, $2.4 trillion being spent on digital transformation. So you have to start thinking, what's post-digital transformation? I've lived through post-analog transformation. And so what are the post-digital transformation times going to look like when we have connectivity and new technologies allow us to do things that we couldn't do before? So let's get started with some of this that on the technology side, which kind of gives me kind of a convenient area to work with. As we all know, if you can't go to a conference without talking about AI and machine learning and big data, things of that nature, even though that term has been used for a while. That's maturing. In 5 years, that's going to be very mature, and it'll be built into almost everything we do. The cloud vendors are already providing capabilities, so you can easily put your applications to look at the data that you have and to start doing advanced analysis on that. Many of you may already be doing that. I know that we've started, and it means, though, some implications. While the technology may mature, what's your data architecture look like? What is your data standards look like? Is the CIO in charge of management of that data? Are they just curators? And I'll talk about that a little later as well. What are the future role of CIO? What I expect to be a little controversial, to be honest with you. What are future roles going to be based on these new capabilities? And how do you take data analytics to the next level? We learned that through the pandemic that how we're meeting today, even though I crave in person occasionally, is the wave of the future. But the tools still are as good as they are. They're not really where they need to be. And so you're in collaboration tools. I think you're going to see certainly advances in talking with companies like Zoom and Microsoft and watching what people are doing, whether it's Zoom, Teams, WebEx, whatever, name your favorite color. They are going to have to change so that it becomes more seamless and the experience is better. But they can't do it all. They can't fix your network. They can't fix your compute capacity. They can't fix your device. So you're going to see some implications of that. 5G is being rolled out now. It's got a lot of hype. 5G is real because it uses a different spectrum. I would say that 6G is going to be the game changer. 5G will start it, but 6G will be the one that provides a whole new level of technology and capability, where in your own company, you may carve out a 6G a window, if you will, or network for your company without having to have networks like we built them before. And that is starting with 5G. That means start looking at that now and have a plan so that when it's time to migrate, it's not a huge cost or a huge way of doing it. Cloud is maturing. I started using cloud at JPL, I would say 10 plus years ago. We saw the benefits of cloud pretty early. I could not keep up with the compute demand of a science-based and engineering-based organization like JPL. And so I couldn't build data centers. I couldn't get enough compute capacity. It took too long. And so when we started our cloud venture, it was to work with our engineers and scientists to provide faster access and give them capacity that they can afford, as much as possible. And that proved to me that IT working with our community, that we could solve a lot of problems together. And it told me that I could rely on the cloud. Now, I have to be honest, it took several years for me to say, am I going to replace my data centers with the cloud? And, that while that hasn't fully happened, it has reduced our data center space, and it has allowed us to think differently in a cloud first mantra, if you will, to start utilizing cloud computing better. We had to learn FinOps. We had to learn basically how to manage in that environment. We have a chargeback capability. We had to learn how to do that. So all those things will be overcome, in 5 years, and the maturity now leads us to what we can do differently. I will tell you that IoT, while we talk about it today, it's almost it's kind of interesting for operational technologies. It might be for inventory, for containers. It may be for tracking things. We started when it was more of a game, and it was kind of fun to play with. We had Amazon Echoes that we played with quite a bit to see if we could make a more automated experience for people. I had one set up where I could ask it questions about my key data that I was interested in. How many help desk calls, how many users are logged on, things of that nature. And we had that working. Unfortunately, there's a syntax with that you have to be exact with, and that used to cause me problems. And so, when natural language processing becomes, as it's maturing and becomes more capable, not only for smart devices, but also so that we can use the human interaction better and experience better, but also because we're going to use, in collaboration, having natural language processing where it can do translation, so that you have a conversation with your colleagues in other countries in their language of choice. That's not that far away. In some places you could play with it now, but in 5 years plus, you're going to see advances in that area where you can have a natural conversation and hopefully communicate better. Things like blockchain, you're already seeing some things with blockchain. Is no longer used just for cryptocurrencies. It's also used for inventories, and we're seeing some really interesting use cases out there, and I invite you to look at that. Where will that be in 5 years? Matter of fact, where will cryptocurrencies be in 5 years? The odds are that we'll have a better way of interacting, exchanging, and working with those technologies as they mature and hopefully stabilize a little bit too. There's always an element of risk with these technologies. So those of you who are type A can move fast. Those of you who are a little more risk averse, you can let the type A's suffer a little bit, and then you can follow on after that. We were both. We're a little risk averse, certainly with missions, but we were type A when it came to looking at newer technologies with our colleagues in our community, and creating prototypes just to see where it would go and what we could see for the future and whether we should track with that technology. We're already seeing robotic process automation being used, especially to reduce the friction and help digitize areas in finance, HR, and traditional areas that otherwise we're looking for applications to do the job. Chatbots are already in place. You use them in your own experience. I have mixed experience with them. Some are good, some are not so good. I think that's going to have to mature, but I'm predicting the intelligent RPA that will determine the need and create the code to create an RPA as needed, so that a new process is created that's based on demand and based on insight that an RPA is determining. And I think you will see better automation of that. Coding is becoming something that a robotic process will be able to do. And I think that's going to impact how we look at processes in the future. Then one of my favorite areas to talk about is quantum computing. And I would only ask you, in the interest of time, to look at that, track that. I have an article I co-authored In one of the other outside things I do, I'm a fellow at Avasant company, and I do some research with them that also benefits JPL. I'm also the executive director of Innovate UCLA, and get feedback from the member companies and that are across multi-industry, and get a lot of input based on that for my talk today, quite frankly. But quantum computing is not necessarily to solve just quantum mechanics problems, but the influence it will have on regular computing, networking, cybersecurity, and storage could be a game changer, especially in 10 years out. There's a lot of investment in that now. And if you're in the business of high performance computing, if you're in the business of using cloud computing, stay attuned to where quantum is. There's some examples out there today, but I would recommend strongly you look at that. So let's talk about the workforce of the future, because I have a few minutes left. I'm going to talk about workforce, cybersecurity, and I'm going to talk about the CIO of the future. So workforce, we already know we have a hybrid today. I'm not sure how many people really want to go back to the office. It's been estimated that 75% don't want to. Now, not all jobs are built that way. And so it's going to create an opportunity for people to rethink the workforce, rethink the location. It's already done that. So, the pandemic has forced us to learn how to work differently. It does impact the culture of a company, and you have to watch out for that. The flexibility, though, is a game changer for the new workforce. People who are baby boomers who will be retiring and moving out of the workforce will probably continue to work more like they used to. It doesn't mean they can't enjoy the opportunity and the flexibility, but it certainly, some things have not changed for them. But you're going to see a better tools and experience come out of that. And you're going to see how the company's culture adapts to this shift in where the workers are. The biggest change I see, and this is one that I think we have to address today and hopefully be skilled in 5 years out so that it becomes a non-issue, is managers are going to have to learn to manage differently. You can't go by location. You can't go by, time card, if you will. So let me move on to cybersecurity. New thinking is required in cybersecurity. We love to secure the device. We love to put bigger fences up. We need to rethink that with our data strategy, how to secure the data. I think that it's bigger than the CISO. I think you're going to see the chief security officer role come out in the future. Some are already doing that now. I think you're going to see, as digital transformation is occurring, that as post-digital transformation, that the cyber landscape becomes much more complex, and it's going to need a new strategy to look at that. And a new org model. And it may not be the model, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it won't be the model we have today. The CIO of the future. In the few minutes I have left, today we have kind of two types. We have the operational, keep the lights on, stay current, make sure SAP or Oracle or whatever is working, but also strategic. And so I'm going to tease you with the idea that the CIO of the future is going to have the ability to provide insight in data, not just curation of data. So, for example, if all the functional areas, if you have expertise in your organization, in the IT organization, for HR, for finance, for product development, for products, for marketing, and they understand the data as well as those functional areas, then the CIO is going to change to providing insight to the C-suite that they couldn't do before. The CFO has that role a lot today because they get insight based on financials. And for a CIO to have the right seat at the table, quite frankly, not the kiddie seat, the right seat, it's going to have this ability to market itself and to provide input and insight into that data that the CEO and the C-suite can rely on, because the CIO has the tools and will have the expertise to do that. I'll be interested in your feedback on that. If you're starting to see that, There's some interesting titles being developed, chief data and analytics officer type roles. I think those are an indicator of change coming. And so be interested to hear what you folks think about that. And finally, I'd like to talk about, where this is all going with future IT. I do think IT organizations need to know something about IT. I've always believed that. So a strong CTO function, I think, is really needed. I think so you're going to see big technology waves, and you need to understand, in my opinion, this is how I approached it, is you need to understand how that technology will work. You want to be the place that people come to say, what do you think about this technology and how does it apply to your company? Leadership is going to change. I've already mentioned with the workforce changing, it's going to provide a new way of working, but it's also a new way of managing. And how do you inspire the workforce? We probably learned a lot through the pandemic and this current way of working, but how do you inspire? How do you lead? And leadership may change as well as management changes. Business will change when it's all digitally transformed. So why would we work the way we work today? And hopefully that will provide a better way of working, more streamlined, but also create opportunities for new types of work in the future. Lifestyle changes, our experiences that we deal with outside of work also influence how we work. And so that's going to continue to work, to look like that. Workforces, I've mentioned the workforce of the future, it's going to change. The demographics are changing, the age is changing, and the experiences are changing that are going to provide great opportunity for new business models, new ways of working, and the employment of the future being multinational, being not in your location, maybe certainly in other locations. We have global companies today. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something bigger than that, that even global companies can work with. And finally, I mentioned this earlier, but compute, storage, and network changes will continue to happen, which will provide the fuel and the opportunity to change the way we look at the future, in such that you can provide a future-proof, a future-ready capability for your organization. And are you ready? Are you prepared? And for your company to have that future? What strategies are you working on? I know we all do budgets. We all look at the next year. We also think about maybe 2 or 3 years out. That's fine. You have to do that. But if you put your lens a little further out, what would you do differently? And I promise you, if you look back 5 years, you'll learn a lot about what you did in the 5 years for the next 5 years. With that, I'm happy to entertain any questions, and I please welcome your feedback on my talk. Thank you very much.